Okay, so it's week 3 for our class. We'll start off with a couple of kind of review questions, just make sure we're sort of on target. So, here, I'm sure you need one. You need to probably look it over 2 or 3 times. All right. Well, Joyce, that's all right. I stood there right back. I should have given you one, too. Here you go, Leon. Okay. What is a missional person? What is a missional person? Don't everybody talk at once. What's a missional person? Thank you, Mr. Circular. A person that thinks about missions. Well, what's that, Richard? There's a little, that's right. So, keep going, Richard. You can go on. That's true. Okay, that's right. What's on your mind?
Well, Jesus Christ.
There you go.
And how you can spread the word.
There, I knew you knew the answer. I was just joking. He's exactly right. We are to be missional people who are constantly engaged in spreading the gospel, constantly seeking to disciple people, constantly seeking to show the love of Christ, constantly seeking to be an image bearer for the King. That's what we mean by being missional. And we want to be a congregation that's missional so that when somebody walks in here, you don't just run over them, because of course they're never going to come back if you run over them, but you want to be the kind of people that they want to be around, that they feel a part of, that they feel included. That's what we mean by being missional. So the problem becomes, so why is it, we'll just have one little sidetrack. Why? That seems pretty easy to say, isn't it? So if that's the case, why are there not 100 people here right now? It could be I'm a terrible teacher, or it could be that the building's too hot or something like that, but I suspect it's probably neither. I'm probably an all right teacher. I've had a lot of experience, so hopefully a little better than all right, and it's not too hot in here. So why is there not 100 people? Yeah. Well, I got a short sleeve shirt on, so that might help a little.
We're not doing our job.
And I don't want to put it too bluntly, but Joyce said it, which is we're probably not missional enough. And so I think this class is designed for us to get more missional and to be showing the love of Christ, to be more mission-minded. That's the point of the class. And are we all doing a good job? No, I'm not either. That's why I chose the topic. I tend to choose topics that I'm not doing very well either. But that's the challenge that we face in 2022, and that is churches are not very missional. The members aren't, and neither are the congregations. And that's a problem. Okay. Now, how does this... Here y'all go. Welcome. Here you go. How does this class relate to Elijah's class?
He's teaching us how to do it.
Yes, ma'am. Because, Joyce, if we are not making disciples, we're not doing what Jesus asked us to do, which is he said to go out and make disciples. And if you're not making disciples, what happens to your congregation? It dies. So that's why it is so critical and why his class is so critical. Now, he has 4 chairs. Somebody tell me one of those chairs. Seeker. So the seeker is really sort of at the early stages, as he talked about. What's one other chair, and then we'll move on? Believer. So be thinking about that in the context of all that we're doing. Now, how does this class relate to the theme of togetherness? Being together, like the banner back there.
If we don't have disciples, we can't be together.
Right. And Stephanie, you said relationships? That's exactly right. If you don't have close relationships, then there's not this sense of being together. And if you don't have a sense of being together, when people come here, they're not going to feel what they want to feel to be able to keep coming back and to go out there and become an image bearer themselves and to go out there and disciple themselves, because part of the feeling that you get in here gets you excited. And if it gets you excited, something unusual might happen. You might do what? Tell somebody. That's right, Richard. You might tell somebody. And you might change yourself. And if you hadn't been telling somebody, you might tell a lot of people. That's the whole idea. We need to be excited, and we need to really want to be getting involved and telling people about Jesus Christ. So if you get there to number 4, down there on your review, how does I lead to we regarding each of us as image bearers? We talked about last week that if you were an image bearer, then what would happen to the we, which is the congregation? It'll grow stronger. We'll grow stronger here, and we'll add people. Now, adding people is not a bad thing. Let me just sort of say that 3 or 4 times. Adding people is not a bad thing. Somewhere along the line in churches, they started to get this idea that maybe they didn't want to add anybody that didn't look like them, or they didn't want to add anybody that didn't think like them. Exactly. That's to be honest with you, crazy talk. Adding people is what it's all about. Winning people for Jesus Christ is what it's all about. Doesn't mean you're adding people that believe in 40 different things that are crazy. You're adding people, though, because you want the congregation to grow and to be more vital and more revitalized. That's the idea. All right. Y'all are doing great. Now, at the end of the last class, last week, we were supposed to be doing something this week. What was it? Praying. And what are we supposed to be praying for? Somebody else. Our congregation. We need to be praying for our congregation, praying that we're the type of place where people come in here and they smell the aroma of Jesus Christ. They come in here and see us and think about Christ. They get a sense of Christ. They feel a sense of love. And as a result, they then want that. It's pretty simple. It's just we've got to hear it. And we've got to be challenged. We know what it is. It's simple, but sometimes we just don't do it. Now, we're talking tonight about a catchy title, but it doesn't mean what some people might think it would mean. And it says, let's get more naked. Now, first off, what do I mean by this? And it's not to play strip poker. What do I mean by this? Exactly, Joyce. We need to be people who are more authentic when we interact with each other. Say it again. It's like being a new baby. Explain that.
When you come out, you don't have, when you come out the window, you don't have clothes on. You're naked. And when you pass away, you're naked.
So she talked about you're naked. You come into the world without any clothes on. In a sense, you're easier to see. Easier to see. Now, who doesn't have a lesson who might have just walked in that needs one? Okay. So, what else about this title? About what do we mean by getting naked? Getting more naked? Tammy?
Maybe the fact that we're all equal.
We're equal in the sense that we're sinners, and I think...
When you're naked, you don't have any labels. You don't have
Exactly. That's what I mean. That's it. Perfect. That's right. Stephanie? Vulnerable. You know, where is he? I don't know where Ray went, but he's somewhere around here. All right. He is really smart. And so I listen to him when he talks. And so last week, when class was over, he said something like, I think he was talking to Mark, and he said something to the effect that, I really don't like to do that, but we need to be more vulnerable, or more, we'll just use our word, naked. Obviously, he didn't say that if you know Ray. He didn't say that. But that's the point being is you have to be that way, more that way, because people know, this standard answer, and I don't mean you want to give the answer that my grandmother used to give, But when somebody asks you how you're doing, if you've had something bad happen, you have a relationship with them, it's all right to ask them to pray for you about that. It's all right to tell them about that and seek advice. Now, as I always tell all about my grandmother, we never asked her how she felt because you didn't want to hear it for an hour. I don't mean you go to that extent, but you have to get some of those layers off and not put forth some sort of a facade that everything is wonderful. You also don't need to weep for 14 straight hours. I'm not talking about that either. But you have to be much more real. Okay, anybody else on what we mean by this?
You shall know them by their love. So Christians have to show love. I've been to different congregations, and they are just out and out cold. If you don't show love, they sure ain't going to want to come back.
And that's part of this also. Exactly. And what I would say to that is to jump down to number 3, and then we'll go back to 2. Patrick Henry said, I have but one lamp to guide my path, and that is the lamp of experience. It's a paraphrase on a passage from the Old Testament. And your experience tells you that when you're around somebody, Larry, that is loving, you like being around them. When you're around somebody that's loving and is pretty open about their life, and you become drawn to them, you come into a relationship with them. And that type of person, you all can each grow stronger being around that type of person because you have a real relationship as opposed to a phony one. And if you look back at your life and your experiences, that is the case. People that I have a close relationship with, when they do something that is dumb or offends me, my reaction is totally different, even if that's wrong, totally different than if it's a stranger. So as we get stronger relationships with each other, we will have more unity, and we will be a more loving place that leads more people to be here. Tom?
So, Robert, are you saying that you give them the benefit of the doubt?
I think I'm less likely to give the benefit of the doubt than to somebody I have a real relationship with. And I know that may be different than some people have. But somebody that I've had real talks with, I'm pretty, I don't know what word to use, but I'd say I'm pretty nice. I tend to be real nice to them. Ray, you missed us talking about you, but it was positive.
Well, maybe it's good that
It was positive. It was positive. All right. So the reason why we want to peel those layers of the onion back is because it will help us grow individually and collectively, the we at this congregation. It's as simple as that. And we talked about Patrick Henry. We're wired that way. We've been created by God to be that way. That we like to be around people that we can be close to. We yearn for that. And we need to be that way so that people want to approach us. People want to talk to us. People want to love on us. You know, it's hard sometimes to love on somebody that is a jerk, arrogant, standoffish. We're supposed to, but it's harder. So we have to be no, that wasn't you either, Ray. That we need to be a person who is sincere and has a level of authenticity so people will want to share Christ with us.
Some of that authenticity, as you talked about, being vulnerable.
Yes.
You know,
I think Stephanie said that.
I'm reminded of, you and Tom did the presentation on what happened in Honduras. And there were times during that presentation that each of you got a little choked up because of what you were talking about. And it reminded me of the one that in 2015 when you had a pretty significant emotional event there. But
I have a lot of them.
it was the impact of that authenticity added to the presentation overall, and it created a deeper connection for the entire congregation with what had happened. And so that's what comes to my mind when you're talking about that.
Well, to piggyback on that, Tom, if you're trying to do what Elijah is working with us about doing and discipling people, those kind of relationships really make the discipling much more natural and much easier to accomplish because you have a relationship now that is authentic and there's a connection. Okay, anybody else? All right. So if you go there to the second page, I really think that's the way that we're talking about the relationship the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit have, is this kind of relationship. Now, we're not anywhere near approaching it, but this is what it's based on. It's based on that love. It's based on that connection. You know, one is three and three is one. It's that level of fellowship, that level of closeness. And I think that's what will make the we here more powerful than we've ever seen it. And what an opportunity for us coming out of COVID, I hope, to, in a pretty wonderful way, and that there's not too much more of it except more minor cases, but I'm sure that won't be exactly right, but hopefully it'll be like that, so that we've just got people wanting to come here all the time. And if we have these kind of things, what we're talking about here, people are going to want to be here. They're going to want to come. They're going to want to be part of this. All right. I use this phrase a lot, and this is what I want us to focus on now for a little bit because it's related to just what we're talking about. So how do we truly strip the onion back? How do we become a people as a congregation and an individual who is broken? And I use that phrase, are you broken before the Lord or not? Now, that doesn't mean that you're down on the ground with people beating you up. What does broken before the Lord mean?
You're letting him lead your life.
You're letting him lead your life. Excellent answer. What else?
We need to be able to be honest with ourselves. And I think that's one of the hardest things that any of us do. But we have to be honest with ourselves to be able to be honest with anybody else. And to truly be broken. We've got to examine who we are, where we stand with the Lord, and figure it out from there.
Human nature is always to look for the bad points on other people. We should look for the good points and forget the bad points. I mean, if you can't say something good about somebody, don't say anything at all. Gossip is it can really bring people down. And so we need to be careful what we say and how we say it.
I think we're just being more in perspective, though, here, what we're talking about here.
I'm going to go one and then over there to Larry. So what Ray said is we need to be honest with ourselves in order to be honest with others. So the point here is a broken person understands that they're vulnerable. They understand that they're not a big shot. They understand that their natural tendency is to be too big for their britches. They understand that without Jesus Christ, they're nothing. And they understand that they are broken, and the only thing that can save them from their brokenness is the blood of Jesus Christ and relationship with Jesus Christ. Boom. You're there. And a person that can realize that can then be effective at being together and to disciple and to have a stronger congregation because they understand where they are with the Lord and they know how wonderful it is to have been saved from that, and then they want to share that with others so they can be there. And a person like that, Larry, is going to be less likely to gossip. I've really never met anybody that's never gossiped, just to be honest with you. But we're not supposed to, I know that. But a person that's like that is going to be working on that and getting better at that. And they're going to be doing a lot of things. Because what Socrates say goes right along with this. The unexamined life is not worth living. You know, Socrates asked a bunch of questions. He never wrote anything down. Plato wrote the things down that we know about whatever he asked. He always asked a lot of questions. So the whole idea is you need to examine your life. Paul says you need to examine yourselves when partaking of the Lord's Supper. And there's probably a greater context than that. But so most people don't want to examine themselves. Why is that? Maddie? Pride. And you know what? We're going to that in just a little bit. That's a great answer. They don't want to examine themselves because of pride. They don't want to think that I'm broken before the Lord. They think they're top taco. So therefore, they don't need to worry about that. Or they've been taught that they need to be that way. I think some of it's ingrained, and then some of it is part of our culture. we sort of have a consumer, a me-first culture. That's the nature of capitalism in some ways not, but in some ways it is. And so that's part of what that is.
There's fear there too.
Ray said there's fear there. I think most of us, in our deepest thoughts, are often terrified.
You have to also believe and know that our family, our church family will always be there. Because sometimes you feel so alone that when this hard situation happens, they're not there.
And you know, that's one of the reasons we're having this class, is because there are so many things that no longer connect us. We live all over. We don't live in the same neighborhood, and we've talked about that. We don't necessarily work with our family in the family trade. You know, there are just so many. We go to different colleges and universities all over the country. People don't tend to live sometimes. You know, most people in here are not native from Frankfurt. Raise your hand if you were born in Frankfurt. So probably less than half were born in Frankfurt. Well, if you'd asked that question 150 years ago, it'd probably been 75 to 80%. We've always been a country that moved a lot, but not as much as perhaps the last 40 or 50 years. So all these things are pulling us away from each other, which is why we're having this class, because we're trying to bring each other together.
And these take us apart. As much as we like to think technology brings us together, we are probably less together because of technology than we would be without it.
Well, there's a fancy word that social scientists use. They call it atomization. And they've been writing about that for about 70 or 80 years. Putnam wrote a big book about it, and a lot of sociologists have written that since then. And the idea is that as interconnected as we are by all these different things, we seem to be the most atomized we've ever been. Just sort of like we feel like we're by ourselves. As we've seen families fracture and everything else, we seem like we're by ourselves. So I think you take this as an opportunity. What an opportunity for the kingdom, where you can focus on the unity found in Jesus Christ and the togetherness found in Jesus Christ. So we've got a real opportunity. We just need to think of it in terms of opportunity rather than thinking of it as, oh, woe is me. All right, let's go to Psalm 51:17. Right up there, perfect. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, you will not despise. And let's do the other one. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Why is that? Why? That's when we need Him the most, and that's why when we recognize that we need Him. And that's why the Lord is, this may be the wrong way to say it, but appears to be further from the haughty and the people that think they're mighty than the people that are described in the Beatitudes. David.
It's not just when we need Him most, but what He's for. He's here to fix the ones that need fixing.
Well, that might be the answer of the day. He's what we're here. He's what we. Would you say that again? He's what we are here for.
That's what He's
That's what He's for.
for.
That's what He's for. To help fix the brokenhearted. That's what He's for. To make us more the way we were created to be. That's a really good answer. All right. Now, I just want you to give me a couple of examples from the Bible that would demonstrate that God understands and is there for people that are broken before the Lord, and seems to not be as keen on people that are haughty and take a big view of themselves. Stephanie? When David prays to have a clean heart, clean spirit. Wow, doesn't that get you a little tingly? Because that's what you're supposed to be like. What else?
God hates pride. You know, Herod, he didn't give God the glory, so he was ate up by worms.
Not too good. That's exactly right. Larry?
Zacchaeus, and Jesus pulled him down from a tree and took him to, Jesus went to his house. And all of us are in trees right now. And we need to look down and see Jesus waiting for us to drop out of that tree. And then we will be what he wants us to be.
Larry said that Jesus is there waiting for us to come out of the tree and get down there and be what he wants us to be. I would say that what that might even equate to is what Elijah's teaching about disciple. He's waiting for us to get out of the tree and go disciple. And there are people in this congregation that could go disciple right now. I don't mean to diminish what Elijah's teaching, but they may not even need it. They just need to do it. There are people that need more training. There are people that need to really seek the Lord to get them to get out of their box and do it. But Jesus wants you to get out of that tree.
Be convicted of our own sins.
And by being convicted of your own sins, you become more approachable to others. Great answer.
Publican that, the Pharisees boasting about how important he is in the public. It says, "Give me Lord, I'm a sinner." And he was the one who went down to his house justified.
So Ray's talking about the two people that go up to pray. One of them's a Pharisee and says, "Boy, hey, I'm wonderful," blah, 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 blah. And the other's a publican and says, "I'm a sinner." And then Jesus says, "This man's is justified." Wow. That really should give us pause. Because I know you all think like I do, and that is, you sometimes wonder, am I more like the Pharisees in these passages of the New Testament than the people that Jesus is holding up? And I think that's what I think for a person that's in Christ, they have to be conscious of that. Because I don't think it's that hard to get there. Okay, anybody else have an example? Joyce.
In the Beatitudes, Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit."
Exactly. I don't think we read them all the time, but there's no reason not to read them again. If you'll get Matthew 5 up there, 1 through about 12 or 13. I always say, and we read this all the time, which is, these are the qualities of a member of the kingdom of God. These are the qualities of a Christian. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." That's enough. So, as you hear those for the 400th time, it should drive home the kind of person that we want to be. Because that person there is not egotistical. That person there is not too big for their britches. That person there is an example of somebody broken before the Lord and realizes that the way they become unbroken is through embracing Jesus Christ. Oh, sorry, Maddie.
I think the problem is that we read things like this, and then people get caught up in this is exactly what I need to do, and I need to be perfect in order to reach this specific goal. And then along the line, they get lost, and they forget what the reason that they're even doing it.
Well, Maddie, I would say I think you're exactly right. So one thing happens is people get caught up in some sort of a work-based, almost occultist type view of Christianity. And so the first thing I tell, and some of us are wired that way. In other words, some of them come out where they're so organized that they've got their canned goods by alphabetical order. I mean, so they're really organized.
Is that a problem?
Well, Tom, I don't know. But anyway, you just think about it. You might need to examine yourself. But the point is, perfection is the enemy of the good. It always is. And so that a person that believes in that type of perfection or seeks to use those works to become perfect, they end up becoming like what the Pharisees have talked about. They end up becoming egotistical in perhaps a different way sometimes than the other we're talking about, and they don't understand that. And so that's a hard thing, and I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Of course, the other side of it is defeatism. I can't do those things. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Tom's talked about it before in our class. It's when you have an unhealthy ego, and it is getting hot, y'all are right. It's when you have an unhealthy ego is what happens on that. All right. So basically what we want to do is strip ourselves of an unhealthy ego and the manifestations that go along with that. Because what that does, we've talked about a bunch of things, but what else does an unhealthy ego do?
It can sometimes destroy others.
That's what I want to talk about. It makes you a terrible image bearer. You're not going to be able to share the gospel effectively if you have an unhealthy ego. It's either going to be the woe is me, and somebody's going to think, well, why do I want to be Debbie Downer all the time? This person's, if they're a Christian, why would I want that? The other thing is, if they're just working themselves to death and seem to be wound up so tight, that's not going to be something that you're going to be able to be an image bearer for either. So it's going to be a real negative experience. And as a result, that's not going to grow the we. It's not going to grow a congregation because that type of image bearer is ineffective. Richard?
Well, I'm just listening. I agree with what you said. Just need to, well, you said ego. How are you going to approach somebody about Jesus? You got a big ego because you're going to think, well, they're not good enough. Not much.
You may not approach anybody if you have that big of an ego, Richard. Yeah, not only will you not be a good image bearer, you might not be one at all. That's right. That takes it even further.
Well, the Pharisees, they were a perfect picture as a group. Individually, I think one or two of them might have come around. Nicodemus chasing rabbits.
No, I understand. Okay, what else? How else? Yes, ma'am.
I think they have to be able to see Jesus in you, in their settings, or wherever you're at. Because otherwise, sometimes it's just a little thing. Compliment somebody's shirt, if you really mean it. Yeah, you can't say, well. But, it's easier than you think. They have to see Jesus in you to want something.
That's right. They've got to see something different, and it has to be something. Because every person who is lost, there is some spark in them that hungers for something else. They have been wired by the Creator to want something else. Dorothy Day, who was sort of a socialist Marxist, but a sharp cookie, called it the long loneliness. There is something within us that seeks and hungers after God. It's that divine spark, the way you're created. And so, by being the kind of person you're talking about, you maybe can kindle that spark. You maybe can get that person closer to the way they were created to be. And if we think like that when we're around people, we'll turn the world upside down. Because that's what's happened with Christianity. And I want to talk about one more thing, and then, Tom, if you could lead that song, God's Family. First verse, right? I'd listen to all of them, but we better just go with one, since that's my favorite song just about. I challenge everybody to start reading about what's going on in Christianity in around the equator and south of the equator. There's all kinds of stuff going on. It's booming. And the reason why it's booming is because of the kind of things we're talking about. And they really believe it. They really believe that they can grow the kingdom. They really believe that they can turn the world upside down. They're not worrying about, whether or not they're going to be eating a strawberry tart or rhubarb pie. I like both of those, by the way. But, they're more focused on the kingdom. And I think that as we do that and we continue to do that, we'll see lots of things happen. I don't know what they'll be. That's only the Lord knows. Okay. And then one other thing, and then we'll get Tom up here. I think I sent it in the email, but I'm trying to get us to have, not that numbers are everything. Ray and I used to always, when we talked, we were elders, I was always more on numbers, and we would always talk about these kind of things. But I'm trying to see if we can get 70 people either in class or watching online. And of course, when we get to 70, I'll probably want to have 100. But try to ask somebody to class next week, and ask them to church, and ask them to Bible class too. Try to ask somebody. It might be somebody that hadn't been here for a while. It might be somebody brand new. But ask somebody. I think we've got a lot going on here that people need to know about and be a part of. Okay, Tom. And thank you.
I want to try this.
Oh, well, you're doing great.
I've only done it twice. We're part of the